There seemingly has been a lot going on with the economy and a lot of discussion of the direction that it's heading. Some people have feared that the stock market is going to crash or that even the dollar is going to crash. But when we look at the data, it's not as bad as many people might make you think. In fact, the dollar is down a little bit, but if we look at just a couple years ago, it's above where it was. The market, of course, is down after the Liberation Day, but of course, it's made some strides in the right direction. So I want to give 5 unbiased thoughts on the current state of the economy. Number 1 is the stock market is pretty volatile right now. Just a couple months ago on the Freedom Finances show, Nick and I were talking about the stock market, and he even stated that there was some volatility. This is before anything about tariffs or any impact that tariffs might have on the economy, but he was talking about the price to earnings ratio. Essentially, the price to earnings ratio means the price of a stock and the earnings of a company. Overall, in the stock market, the price to earnings ratio was relatively high. What this means is that the price of the stock was way higher than the earnings should be within the stock market. Nick thought that maybe there's some room for the stock to slow down or even drop. Personally, what I thought was maybe instead of the stock market growing at a 20% rate that it had been over the last 5 years, maybe it slows to a 5 or 6% rate growth. Well, after Liberation Day, 2 terrible days which led down to maybe a 10 to 15% drop in the stock market. The stock market went down, but has gotten a little bit better. Overall, I don't think we're looking at any sort of stock market crash, even though some people did call the stock market crashing just a couple weeks ago as some sort of economic crisis. So yes, the stock market is volatile, but it's not in any sort of crisis. Number 2, I'm cautiously optimistic about the labor market. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell the other day just spoke about the labor market, and he said,
"The labor market is at or near maximum employment. Inflation has come down a great deal, but is still running a bit above our 2% objective."
What that means is the people who are looking for a job generally have a job. There are still plenty of people out there who don't have a job who want a job, or people who are in long-term unemployment, which is over 6 months, who have become discouraged or who have struggled with finding a job. But right now, most people who want a job have a job. That's a good thing. Many people worried about tariffs and said it's going to take away jobs. Some people said that tariffs are going to add jobs. And honestly, while tariffs are generally tax or inflationary, I don't think it'll impact the labor market too much, although I do think sometimes we may see some companies lose some employees because of price increases, and I think some companies might open some manufacturing in the US if the tariffs play out the way we think they will. But overall, the stock market is relatively strong, and I'm cautiously optimistic. Could this change in a couple months? Absolutely. Number 3, inflation seems to be headed in the right direction, although tariffs could impact this. Inflation has been trending down, and we got an amazing inflation report in March showing that inflation dropped by 0.1%. This is great news as the volatile food and energy market goes up and down often, but it trended downwards. Energy, gasoline specifically, was way down for inflation last month. Right now in mid-April, we're seeing gas prices stay about where they are, and we're even seeing things like egg prices stay down in the low $3 instead of $8, which they were in February. Right now, prices seem to be going down or stopping the creeping inflation that we had in 2022 and 2023. Now, what impact will tariffs play? It's hard to say because, one, we don't even know if the tariffs are real at this point. We know there are some tariffs that are in effect, especially with China. We know some tariffs have been paused. We don't really know if this is somewhat of a political game or a trade war where President Trump is trying to get his way and maybe reduce tariffs on the United States. It's hard to say. Generally, economists agree that tariffs will bring price increases, at least in the short term. In the long term, maybe prices will go back down or they'll settle as American manufacturing goes up, but it's hard to say. So right now, I'm also cautiously optimistic around inflation. And here's my 4th thought on the economy, and that there's way too much rhetoric around the economy in general. Most of this rhetoric, let's be honest, we know is around politics, whether you're a liberal or a conservative, a Republican or a Democrat. You like President Trump or you don't like President Trump. Obviously, the discussion around massive tariffs made a huge impact on the stock market just a couple weeks ago. And whether you like tariffs or whether you hate tariffs, there's no denying it made an impact on the stock market. However, there's been a lot of articles or discussions saying we might be entering the next Great Depression, or we might be entering a recession, or we're in a recession right now. While that is possible, there's no labor crisis, there's no inflation crisis. Yes, the stock market dipped quite a bit, but it's recovering relatively slowly, but in a couple months it should be back where it was just a couple weeks ago. So the rhetoric around the economy unfortunately isn't driven with too much data, but instead it is driven by politics, political parties, ideology. And that really isn't where we should be looking at when we look at economic or financial data. And finally, I kind of discussed this already, but number 5, there is no economic crisis. When we think about the economic crises of the last few years, let's say 20 years or so, we have the COVID crisis of 2020. And the reason why the economy struggles so much is people were staying home, restaurants were closing at least temporarily, people were going home from work. Unemployment went up and people were spending less money. The economy simply wasn't moving, and that was terrible for the economy. In 2008, we had a mortgage crisis, which the government wanted more people to own homes. Bankers wanted more people to own homes because they would earn money off of interest and mortgages. And people wanted to own more homes because people felt it was their right to do so. This was an economic crisis of high severity, and that caused a mini market crash and a little recession that we saw for about 12 to 18 months. We even had the dot-com bubble where so much money was invested into the internet and websites. Many of those went out of business. Right now, the big thing we have going on in the economy is the discussion around tariffs, which have made an impact, but right now they haven't impacted our actual economy when it comes to jobs or prices. So is there an economic crisis? Not anyone that we've seen. A lot of people say that they don't like President Trump's policies. That's fine, you don't have to love his policies, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're all going to lose our jobs or unemployment's going to spike to 10, 15, 20%. Inflation is going to go sky high. Simply put, there is no economic crisis right now. Could this change? Yes, of course, something could happen in the world, whether it's war or a major stock market crash or something going on with trade that really sticks that can scare the stock market to crash. But right now, there is no economic crisis. So those are my 5 thoughts on the economy right now. To sum it up, the economy is actually pretty strong. Even Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said that the economy of the United States is strong. He's also cautiously optimistic, and the biggest fear that Powell has are short-term impacts on inflation from tariffs. What will the economy look like in a year from now? It's really hard to say. It looks like the tariffs are not too sticky so far. So if you love them, I guess that's a bad thing for the economy. If you hate tariffs, I guess that's a good thing for the economy. Thanks for watching. Keep following Freedom Finances on YouTube, X, Facebook, and TikTok. And you can go to freedomfinances.org to build a financial plan, get out of debt, or just increase your financial literacy.